Becca, you're still as inconsiderate and useless as ever. This trip was something my son and I were excited about. You, who had no part in planning it, can leave now. My mother-in-law starts criticizing me as soon as my husband steps away from the table. We were on a trip abroad that my husband wanted me to organize. Well, if she's going to be like that, I might as well go home. What happens between them after that doesn't concern me. I'm Becca, a married woman working for a big company. Since my job is flexible, I mostly work from home, so I spend a lot of time there. My husband Jack always tries to show off and act like he's better than everyone else. He loves spending money but never chips in for our household expenses. I didn't notice this side of him when we were dating, but after we got married and started living together, it became more obvious. His mom loves boasting about him. I've heard of moms who adore their sons, and I was ready for that to some extent. But she's stubborn and won't listen to anyone else's views, not even her husband's, because she thinks her son is the greatest. She really doesn't like me. Every time we see each other, she makes snarky comments. She's especially bothered by the fact that I'm financially comfortable relying on my son's income alone. She keeps pestering me, saying, "You're still young. You should get a job outside the house." I tried explaining countless times that I do work from home, but she just sees it as a part-time gig. She assumes I'm just pretending to work, sitting at my computer. She probably thinks I'm playing games all day instead of doing housework, seeing me as a useless wife. My husband knows how I work, but he's never bothered to explain it to his mom. Even when she brings it up in front of him, he ignores it. I've asked him to clarify things, but he just wants us women to sort it out ourselves and leaves it all to me. He even says he doesn't want to deal with problems. Once, when I kept pushing him to take action, he threw a completed divorce paper at me. It hurt to be treated like that, and I considered divorcing him. But I heard divorce is even more complicated than marriage. If it's harder than what we're going through now, it could be a bigger problem, so I ended up giving in to my husband's argument. I realized that my husband always puts his mother first. It's frustrating, but I know I have to find a way to handle her without causing more trouble. I didn't agree to divorce because my feelings change, but it seems like my husband thinks I'm still madly in love with him and didn't want to break up. His arrogant attitude keeps getting worse. It's cute when a child tries to act mature, but it's a major turnoff in an adult. I've learned to brush off his arrogant remarks and pretend not to notice his actions. There's another reason why I didn't divorce him. Because of my husband's job, we live far away from my in-laws. We only see them once or twice a year. I thought I could handle that, especially when everyone was making a big deal about having 9 days off in a row. Even during vacations on weekdays, both my husband and I were usually working. For me, American holidays don't matter much since I adjust my schedule based on international needs. And for my husband, he simply wasn't taking 9 consecutive days off according to the calendar. When he came home after his first day back at work, he suddenly said, "Let's go on a trip abroad." When I asked what he meant, he explained that his coworkers had taken time off to have a 9-day holiday for an overseas trip, and he felt left out. He was quite proud of his idea, but it just left me baffled by his childishness. But since I haven't traveled this year, I suggested we take a trip within the country. My husband has never traveled overseas, so if we were to go abroad, he'd need to get a passport. It wouldn't be an issue with you. You're fluent in several languages. I studied abroad and traveled a lot before marriage. Besides English, I can speak Spanish and a bit of Chinese if needed. When my mom back home got into Korean dramas, I learned Korean with her, but I haven't had much chance to use it, so I'm not very confident. Sure, I might be better at languages than my husband, but getting passports isn't as easy as he thinks. I tried to convince him to travel abroad in the summer or winter, but he wouldn't budge. Instead, despite having no experience, he chose the destination, took time off without permission, and expected me to handle the logistics. It's not a guided tour. Why should I deal with strangers? He even argued that English is universal, and we wouldn't have any problems just the two of us. I thought maybe it would be okay, but before I knew it, he said, "Yeah, I'll make sure to bring Mom along. You'll handle that too, won't you? Taking care of 2 inexperienced travelers is too much for me alone. You should show some respect for your elders once in a while. You might even earn some brownie points by doing so, my dear devoted wife. It's for your own benefit, Becca. You should appreciate it, he said, making it sound like he was doing me a favor. Arguing against it seemed pointless. So I quietly made the reservations as my husband instructed, and I came up with a plan to handle everything from applying for my mother-in-law and husband's passports to booking flights and hotels. It was a lot of work, but to execute my plan, I patiently fulfilled all of my husband's wishes and crafted a flawless itinerary. On the day we flew overseas, my mother-in-law, who didn't know about my problems, happily said, just as I expected from my son, "We must be flying in fancy seats, right?" I bet my husband boasted, saying he arranged everything and planned the trip. But the truth is, I did all the work, and he did nothing. They left all the paperwork and planning to me. Even though they hardly knew anything about airports, they wandered around on their own while I dealt with everything. They were clueless even when it was time to board, and I struggled to find them. The airport staff even asked, "Should we announce your boarding gate?" Becca didn't tell us. It was chaotic, but they didn't seem sorry. They complained that I was planning to have fun alone during the flight. They behaved quietly, but it was frustrating and embarrassing every time they called a flight attendant. After a few hours, we reached the country we were visiting. I thought I could finally relax at the hotel after going through immigration. But suddenly, my husband looked sick and said he needed the bathroom. He handed me his bag and hurried off. I don't get why he got sick when we ate the same food. He had been smiling and talking to the flight attendant he liked. Maybe it's karma catching up with him. Then my mother-in-law started complaining, saying, "Becca, you're such a thoughtless daughter-in-law. How long are you staying here? My son planned this trip for me, just the two of us. You're just here for a free ride. You don't even work. It's bold of you to think you can enjoy this trip without contributing. Go home." I replied, "Are you sure? I can't enjoy myself with you around." She said, "Okay then, I'll leave." So I gave my husband's suitcase back to my mother-in-law and kept only my small bag. I didn't look at her and walked away. She looked surprised, which was funny because she had just told me to leave. I tried hard not to laugh. My husband kept running to the bathroom, so we didn't see each other. Luckily, I got a ticket back to America. I had planned to go home alone if I got the chance. I wouldn't mind being a guide if we got along, but not with them. It's too stressful, and I wouldn't gain anything. I can't help but smile when I think about what they'll do without me. They only speak English, but they can use translation apps on their phones. But I can't imagine my husband, who likes to brag, doing that. After safely making a few side trips, I went straight to the fancy hotel where my parents were waiting. My husband, Jack, wanted me to show respect to my parents, so I treated them to a luxury trip in upstate New York. They were supposed to travel there leisurely, enjoying the sights and meals along the way. I managed to meet up with them earlier than planned, which surprised them. When I quickly explained what happened, they were shocked. They couldn't believe I agreed to Jack's request. My phone was buzzing with calls and messages from Jack, but I ignored them. I turned off my phone and enjoyed my time with my parents. After our celebration, I got a call from the embassy when I got home. Here's what happened. Jack came back from the bathroom and couldn't find me, so he got really angry. He tried calling me but couldn't reach me, so he went to the hotel alone. But he didn't know where to go and got really confused. Someone who didn't speak English well offered to help and said they'd take him to the hotel, but instead, they robbed him and my mother-in-law. They took all their money, passports, and valuable things. When the police found Jack looking lost on the street, they took him to the embassy for help. That's how he managed to contact me. The embassy asked me to come and get him. He couldn't get any money because his wallet with his bank cards was stolen. But I wondered why I, a stranger, had to help him. I told him I was already divorced from him. The truth is, I kept the divorce papers he threw at me a while ago. At the time, I decided not to go through with the divorce because it seemed like too much trouble. But now I had had enough. I filled out the divorce papers as soon as I got back to the States. Surprisingly, the divorce went through smoothly. I already had a new place ready, and I signed the lease while planning my trip. I didn't want to use the furniture I shared with him. It made me uncomfortable. I planned to buy all new furniture for my new place, so I packed for both my trip and the move. I only need to bring my work tools and favorite clothes to the new place. I can easily have everything else delivered by a courier at a later time. The embassy staff didn't ask me anything else, and our talk was over. Later, it seems my ex-mother-in-law convinced my ex-father-in-law to help, so my ex-husband Jack and ex-mother-in-law could come back to the States. But then Jack, who was really angry, contacted me. "You left me and divorced me without even telling me, abandoned me." "No, I just followed your mom's orders to leave. If you're upset, talk to her. And don't forget about the business class flight I arranged for your return. It was my goodbye gift." I also reminded him that he was the one who first mentioned divorce. "I only filled out the divorce papers you had ready, doing what you wanted. Do you think making excuses like that will work? How much more do you want to embarrass me?" Embarrassed? How? If you want to feel embarrassed, I have an even better story. Want to hear it? What is it? Did you know you're a regular at a strip club? You're spending a lot of money on a favorite dancer there instead of helping with household expenses. But when her demands got too much, you ended up in debt, right? I found a debt collection letter for Jack at our house and had an investigation agency look into it. Despite Jack being a big spender, his obsession seemed to push the dancer away. She hoped he'd stop coming if she kept asking for more money and gifts. I wonder how Jack felt when he heard that. It's quite embarrassing, isn't it? If you cause any more trouble or contact me again, I'll tell your company about it. Understand? Being disliked by the dancer he liked so much would be a huge blow to Jack's ego. If this got out, it would be very embarrassing for him. Jack, who had been aggressive until then, just said, "Okay," in a weak voice and hung up. A few days later, my ex-father-in-law reached out to me. He said he had also divorced my ex-mother-in-law. I thought it was unnecessary since we were no longer family, but he wanted to share what he had found out about her true nature. He had become suspicious of her spending and discovered that she had used up his retirement savings on beauty treatments and cosmetic procedures. I had no idea about this since I'm not familiar with those things. When he asked for a woman's perspective, I couldn't help much because I hadn't noticed anything either. Maybe seeing her only once a year made the changes more obvious, but I truly haven't seen any. I even asked him, "Are you sure it's for beauty treatments? She spent a lot, but I don't see any visible changes." Perhaps there were small changes that only my ex-mother-in-law could notice. It seemed like a waste of money to me. Naturally, my ex-mother-in-law, who was left with nothing, turned to her son Jack for help. But Jack, who used to be the family support, is drowning in debt. Since our divorce, he even lost his apartment because he couldn't pay the rent. Now, he and his mother are living in a rundown apartment, but his mother refuses to work and keeps spending on beauty treatments. Jack is struggling to pay off his debts and cover his mother's expenses while working nonstop. It seems they still care about appearances, even though their living conditions have worsened. If they're okay with it, I won't interfere. But I heard from others that the quality of the beauty treatments has dropped, and she looks much older now. As for me, I appreciate the peace and freedom to focus on my work without anyone controlling me. It reminds me of the importance of living within my means.
My name is John Olson, and I'm 49 years old, working at a trading company with a prominent national brand. One day, the branch president called me into his office. "John, you've been transferred." "Transferred? To where?" "They want you back at headquarters." "I see. I've just started building solid connections here after 2 years. I know it's tough. I'll miss you too, but this is a direct order. You need to visit headquarters first to get acquainted with your new role." Returning to the headquarters after 2 years felt surreal. The place was as immaculate as ever, and I could hardly believe how much time had passed. I waited in the conference room for my new boss, but after 30 minutes, no one had arrived. Finally, a woman entered. "Mr. Olson, I'm Mary Emerson from HR. Nice to meet you." She introduced herself with a curt bow and made no apology for her lateness. You still have the option to decline this position at headquarters. Excuse me? What do you mean? Manager Emerson responded with a dismissive laugh. People like you might not fit in at headquarters. Maybe you should have stayed comfortable at the branch, she said. Her words gave me a headache. What was her problem? I'm determined to give it my best at headquarters. Manager Emerson snorted in disapproval. My official return to headquarters was scheduled for a month later. Despite the sadness of leaving, I was eager to start. Ideally, I would have attended some training sessions, but I had been too busy with handovers and tasks at the branch to get any introductions. I felt a bit anxious about starting without proper preparation. Still, I was glad to be back at headquarters. On my first day, rather than heading straight to the office, I waited in the conference room for Manager Emerson, as we were supposed to go to the workplace together. She'd arrived on time and seemed surprisingly disappointed to see me. You actually showed up, she remarked, her tone cold. I bowed, enduring her rudeness. I'm looking forward to working with you. Let me be clear, you might not be suited for this position at headquarters. Remember, we're one of the top companies in the nation. I understand. Few people make it to headquarters, most are stationed at the branches. That was certainly true. Only a small fraction of applicants make it to headquarters, most are assigned to branches. Securing a transfer to headquarters is a rare achievement and carries a certain prestige. Actually, I worked at headquarters until 2 years ago, I said. So, you were demoted to a branch? It's surprising to see you back here. I chose not to explain the details of my transfer, as it wasn't a demotion. I noticed from your records that you only completed middle school. Yes, that's correct. Manager Emerson shook her head, clearly in disbelief. How could someone with just a middle school education hold a position at headquarters? Did you use any underhanded methods? That's not the case. It's not possible to work at headquarters with only a middle school education without some form of deceit in the hiring process. Manager Emerson approached me aggressively. No, I didn't. I excelled in the tests. Please refrain from making baseless accusations. I'll be sure to dig into your background. It looks like I've encountered a challenging individual. By the way, my daughter also works here. Oh, I see. How did you know about that? I asked. Well, there have been some rumors, Manager Emerson replied. Her demeanor shifted to one of satisfaction upon hearing my response. Really? My daughter is quite well known here. She's exceptional and a source of great pride for me. With a sudden boost in her mood, Manager Emerson led me to the office. When we arrived at the HR department, the situation was far from over. I stood in front of the HR staff during the morning assembly, where Manager Emerson introduced me. This is John Olson. He'll be joining our department effective immediately. I look forward to working with him. The staff members responded with awkward bows. Manager Emerson then smiled slyly. Given his middle school education, feel free to treat him as you would a servant. He's only useful for that, she said with a chuckle. I raised my head slowly. I look forward to working with you all. The staff exchanged uneasy glances. A more senior employee hesitated before speaking up. Ma'am, what should we do with him? Manager Emerson responded with indifference. How should we handle it? The staff member looked at me for guidance, and I interjected. I apologize for not introducing myself properly, Manager. John Olson, the middle school dropout. Does that not suffice? Manager Emerson continued to laugh. No, I haven't mentioned everything, I said, handing my business card to someone. My name is John Olson, and I work as an audit officer. Please remember that. An auditor? She asked, clearly surprised. Yes, I replied with a confident smile. Manager Emerson's expression tightened. She looked around to gauge the staff's reactions. That can't be true. You can never hold a position as an audit officer. Why are you so certain? In reality, I am an officer. Feel free to verify with your superiors if you have any doubts. Manager Emerson looked taken aback. I was hoping to keep this a secret. After all, my role involves conducting audits. I should have warned everyone in advance. The staff bowed their heads in apology. I'm sorry for the misunderstanding. No, it's not your fault. It's understandable that everyone in HR would recognize me since I was here until 2 years ago. I regret not anticipating this. The staff seemed relieved by my comments. Why does everyone seem to believe he really is an audit officer? Are you all trying to deceive me? I asked, why would we do that? What would be the benefit? Manager Emerson, however, refused to listen. How could a middle school dropout become an audit officer at a major company like ours? It's ridiculous, she said with a laugh. Let me clarify, said one of the staff members. This is John Olson, the audit officer. He achieved top marks in the entrance exam. Manager Emerson chuckled again. My daughter also excelled in exams. Does that mean she should be an officer immediately? No. When Audit Officer Olson was only 15, he outperformed many college graduates. That's what makes his achievement remarkable. What? So he's just good at academics. It's not just about academics. Officer Olson was highly effective in the sales department. He built crucial connections with our most important Chinese business partners from scratch. It's not an exaggeration to say he played a key role in elevating our company to one of the top positions in the country. He has numerous other accomplishments as well. The staff member spoke with enthusiasm about my achievements. Despite feeling uncomfortable, it was important to support my claims. Manager Emerson's expression darkened as the staff member continued. Recognized for these accomplishments, he became the youngest audit officer ever appointed. At last, Manager Emerson seemed to grasp the situation. So your transfer to the branch 2 years ago was related to? Yes, it was for my auditing duties. Excuse me, but what exactly does an audit officer do? My role involves addressing any misconduct among employees, including high-level executives. I can't go into specifics, but there were particular reasons for my transfer to the branch. Manager Emerson bowed her head briefly. I apologize for any misunderstandings. That's all right. Just remember, it's important not to judge people solely based on their education. It doesn't benefit anyone. Yes, I'll keep that in mind, Manager Emerson said, lifting her head slowly. But why has an audit officer come to our HR department? Realizing there was no avoiding it, I replied, of course, for auditing purposes, and it happens that this HR department is the subject of the audit. The HR staff became visibly uneasy. Manager Emerson was the first to object. Wait, there's nothing wrong with our HR department. I see the employees calming down. I'm not suggesting there's an issue with the entire HR department. Then what are you implying? It means that the investigation is focused on a specific part within HR. Manager Emerson's expression tightened. You mean it's me? Her eyes widened in shock. What could I have possibly done to deserve this? Don't make such accusations. I've already reflected on my judgments and vowed never to repeat them. Of course, it's not solely about that. I wouldn't be here just for that reason. From now on, I'll discuss this matter privately with you. Everyone else, please return to your work. As I spoke, the staff returned to their tasks, their murmurs lingering in the air. I followed Manager Emerson into another room to continue our discussion. What was that about? Manager Emerson asked, her face flushed with anger. I was approached by the sales department manager with a concern. There's a problematic employee in the sales department, Nicole Emerson, your daughter. Manager Emerson looked away abruptly. My daughter? What about her? She seems to have several issues. She lacks common sense and knowledge. Her attitude is poor, and she apparently has no motivation to work. Exactly, I confirmed. Manager Emerson immediately protested. I can't do anything about that. As her parent, I can't oversee her at work. I find it hard to believe what the sales department manager is saying. She's an excellent and proud daughter. So you believe the sales department manager is spreading false rumors? I asked. That's right. My daughter graduated from a prestigious private university. How can she lack knowledge and common sense? Are you suggesting we should judge based on education alone? No, of course not. I do believe that most people with strong educational backgrounds are capable. So do you think the sales department manager is mistaken? I asked, shaking my head. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. We didn't rely solely on the sales manager's opinion. We conducted our own investigation beforehand. An investigation? Yes, my team observed Nicole's performance and found that the sales manager's concerns were valid. Manager Emerson began to sweat. Is that true? Yes, unfortunately, she's not meeting the standards required for our company. Manager Emerson, however, continued to defend her daughter. Even the most talented individuals can be influenced by their environment. Indeed, that might be true. I'm sure my daughter isn't getting along with her manager or colleagues, or perhaps she's too talented and is being ostracized. In such a situation, it's difficult to perform well, which can lead to a negative attitude. I nodded in agreement. That's a possibility we can't ignore. Therefore, I'm planning to transfer Nicole to this HR department. Under my guidance, she can better showcase her abilities. It's beneficial for both the employee and the company to be in the right role. That's certainly true, Manager Emerson said with a satisfied smile. I'll have my daughter submit a transfer request immediately. Wait a moment, I interrupted as she reached for the phone. What's the matter? We need to act quickly. It's possible Nicole's performance has been affected by her current environment. That's what I've been saying, Manager Emerson replied, clearly frustrated. However, we need to consider another possibility. And what's that? It's possible she might not have met our company's hiring standards in the first place. Manager Emerson leaned back and laughed. What do you mean? That would imply there was an issue with the recruitment process. If that's the case, it's a serious problem. Yes, it is. But what we suspect isn't just a mistake in the process. Then what is it? We believe there might have been some wrongdoing. Excuse me? Are you suggesting misconduct in the recruitment process? That's impossible. Anger flashed in Manager Emerson's eyes. I won't tolerate any further insults to my daughter. I assure you, these aren't baseless claims. There are troubling facts that point in this direction. What facts? In our investigation of Nicole, we found her level of knowledge alarmingly low. It's questionable whether she even has a college education. I presented some documents. Here are samples of work she produced in the sales department, errors and typos that are hard to ignore. Additionally, her basic knowledge has been called into question during conversations with other employees. Manager Emerson snorted in disapproval. That's just personal perception. Typos could be simple mistakes or computer errors. While Nicole should have reviewed her work, concluding she lacks common sense based on that is unfair. I handed Manager Emerson a piece of paper and said, true, errors can occur. However, Nicole has achieved something quite remarkable in a particular area. Manager Emerson looked at the document, visibly stunned. She worked hard to prepare for the test and interview. That's the result of her efforts, Manager Emerson defended. If that's the case, it's impressive. But are you suggesting that all that knowledge just disappeared after she joined the company? That seems unlikely, I replied. So what are you implying? Her test results were outstanding. And that's a fact, Manager Emerson retorted. That's why we suspect there might have been misconduct. I said firmly. Misconduct? What could my daughter possibly have done? Nicole couldn't have done it alone. A manager in HR could have conveyed test content and interview points to their daughter, right? Manager Emerson's face turned pale as I said this. There's no way I would do such a thing, she insisted. It's difficult to believe otherwise, I replied, maintaining my composure. Look, I don't know what you're trying to achieve as an audit officer, but do you have any evidence? Evidence? I echoed, somewhat taken aback. Yes, you've been making claims, but it's all just conjecture, isn't it? Do you have any proof? I shook my head. Unfortunately, I don't have concrete evidence that I communicated test content to my daughter. That's why I came to HR, hoping to find some. But it seems that won't be possible now. Manager Emerson smirked triumphantly. Don't worry, you won't find any evidence because there's nothing to find. I sighed deeply. I don't want to escalate this, but... What? Are you planning to proceed without evidence? We have no choice but to verify it directly. Seeing Manager Emerson's confusion, I clarified. We'll require Nicole to retake the recruitment test, only the written exam this time. Manager Emerson's face went pale. What? Have her retake the test? Yes, I confirmed. That's unnecessary. She already passed the written exam. Why should she retake it? Because there's a possibility she might have cheated. If Nicole truly earned her top scores through her own ability, she should have no trouble with a new test we've prepared. It's a different test, but of similar difficulty. But she's been working diligently, Manager Emerson protested. Unfortunately, Nicole doesn't seem to have the necessary motivation. It doesn't matter if she lacks knowledge or if she may have cheated to get in. If she were working properly, the sales manager wouldn't have raised concerns. The core issue is her lack of motivation. Manager Emerson looked at me with a pained expression. So you're doing this to fire her? It's not about firing her. It's about taking appropriate action. The problem appears to lie more with you, Manager Emerson, than with Nicole. With me? Manager Emerson seemed bewildered. Yes, if you, as the HR manager, use your position to get your daughter into the company, it undermines our company's credibility. We need to address this before it becomes public. What will happen? In the worst case, both you and Nicole could face termination. Manager Emerson began to cry. Wait, please listen to me. What is it? I didn't want this, Nicole insisted, and I couldn't refuse. I thought if she failed at her job, I would resign myself. It's true, I did it. Manager Emerson reluctantly admitted her actions, revealing her desperation to help her daughter, even at the cost of her own integrity. No more excuses. We'll conduct a thorough investigation and determine the appropriate disciplinary action for both of you. Until then, you're to stay home and await further instructions. Manager Emerson left with a downcast expression. Nicole, on the other hand, was informed and seemed relieved by the prospect of leaving early. She departed from the company. The investigation confirmed the misconduct. Manager Emerson had indeed shared tests and interview details with her daughter. As a result, Manager Emerson was demoted and transferred to a branch, while Nicole lost her job. Despite her efforts at the branch, Nicole felt uneasy due to the rumors and eventually resigned, relying on odd jobs for income. Nicole did not seek further employment and was eventually left without a place to stay. As for me, I continued with my audit duties and received recognition for my achievements, eventually earning the position of vice president. My name is Eugene Harrison, and I'm a 35-year-old IT professional with a passion for golf. I joined the company about 6 months ago, where my role primarily involves system development and handling various tasks, such as making copies to support my colleagues. My days are busy and fulfilling, but from the outset, I have been labeled as less than useful. I don't socialize with anyone in my department outside of work, so I usually spend my lunch breaks alone on the rooftop. Things took a turn in April when a personnel change occurred. Our department's former boss was transferred, and Jennifer Parker, a new manager known for her exceptional management skills rather than engineering expertise, took over. The previous boss had complained about engineers working excessive overtime and the associated costs. Jennifer, who is strikingly beautiful and 5 years younger than me, quickly captured the attention of the department. Her inaugural address caused quite a stir among the men, and I was instantly captivated by her presence. Despite the rumors about her looks, she was even more stunning in person, exuding both beauty and competence. Like many of my male colleagues, I became an admirer. However, Jennifer didn't seem to think highly of me. She perceived me as an underperforming employee. It became clear that she was carefully observing everyone to get a grip on the department. Within a week, she started assigning tasks with precision. Over the next month, there was a noticeable reduction in overtime and errors, while morale and job satisfaction improved significantly. I felt a sense of relief, especially since I had often been on the receiving end of previous frustrations. Jennifer's arrival coincided with a project deadline, so the welcome party was delayed by about a month and a half. By then, she had already become well integrated into the department. When the party finally took place, it was casual and lively, with a relaxed, no-holds-barred atmosphere. With the project behind us, spirits were high. I don't drink alcohol at social gatherings, so I sipped on my soft drink while observing everyone progressively getting drunk. Aside from a few new recruits like Sally and her group, not many people engaged with me, though I hope that might change come winter. During the conversation with the younger staff about travel, Jennifer joined us. She had been encouraged to drink quite a bit and was noticeably inebriated, her usually sharp and focused demeanor replaced by a more disheveled appearance with half-closed eyes. "You had too much to drink, Jennifer," I said, trying to steady her as she struggled to stay upright. The new recruits looked concerned. "I'm not drunk. You're all just teasing me," she giggled, trying to deny her condition. It was clear she was quite tipsy. "Stop talking only to the younger ones, Eugene. Talk to me too, or don't you want to mingle with a younger female boss?" she said, leaning in closer, her words slurred and her balance wavering. I wanted to create some distance, but I was concerned she might fall if I moved away. The new recruits, likely uneasy about the situation with the boss, quickly excused themselves, leaving Jennifer and me alone at a corner table. "Come on, Jennifer, sit up straight," I said, trying to help her balance by gently pushing her shoulders. She swayed and struggled to maintain her posture. Can't you lend me your shoulder? It's not like it's going anywhere, she mumbled, her words barely coherent as she acted more like a child. Her legs swung around, and one of her high heels flew off and disappeared under the table. Jennifer, surprised by the sudden loss of her shoe, bent down to look for it, her face pressed against the floor. She then burst into laughter, clearly amused by her own antics. Seriously, Eugene, you always have that serious look, but I can tell you're actually really good at your job, Jennifer said, puffing out her cheeks as she spoke. Her words took me by surprise. As far as I knew, only the CEO was aware of my background, and it seemed unlikely that Jennifer would be informed. Was she picking up on something from my usual behavior? You're underestimating me, she continued playfully, giving me a weak cat punch. I'm not a fan of alcohol or drugs, and this situation was quickly becoming uncomfortable. Could someone help me with Jennifer? I called out to the busy tables around us. A colleague came over to assist. Despite her condition, Jennifer stubbornly clung to my arm. Jane, a colleague who had joined the company at the same time as Jennifer, informed me that she had called Jennifer's sister to pick her up. A taxi was on its way. Jane chuckled, revealing that Jennifer, despite her low tolerance, had a fondness for alcohol. By this point, Jennifer had started to doze off while still holding onto my arm. You've become her favorite, Jane laughed, observing the scene. About 15 minutes later, Jennifer's pickup arrived. I apologize for the trouble my sister has caused, a woman who resembled Jennifer said when she arrived. Her demeanor was markedly different, not at all like a corporate worker. I'm Kate, Jennifer's sister. I'm really sorry for any inconvenience she's caused, she said, her apology making me feel a bit awkward. Kate had a cab waiting outside the bar, so I helped Jennifer into it. During this time, I noticed that Kate kept glancing at me, which made me feel somewhat uneasy. Is there something on my face? I asked, checking my face with my hand. Kate shook her head and asked, Are you a systems engineer? I explained my job to Kate, confirming that I was a systems engineer but mostly handled various tasks. Kate tilted her head in a curious, almost youthful gesture that I found oddly endearing. It reminded me of the uneasy feeling I'd had when I first met Jennifer. The inexplicable discomfort lingered even after they had left in the cab. The next day, as soon as I arrived at work, Jennifer grabbed my arm and said, I'm really sorry. I heard I was a real bother yesterday. She continued to apologize, which made me feel a bit guilty. It's no big deal. You were just drunk, I replied, trying to downplay the incident with a joke. It seemed that Jennifer had been scolded by Kate and instructed to apologize to me. I'm really sorry, Jennifer said, her expression genuinely remorseful. Don't worry about it. It was just a company party. I didn't mind at all. Jennifer appeared visibly relieved and smiled. Her smile had a different effect on me compared to the night before, but I decided to keep my feelings to myself. About a month and a half had passed since the party. My days continued to be filled with various tasks, but I felt a sense of fulfillment. As usual, I headed to the rooftop for lunch. There was a small chapel located on the rooftop of our building. I always take my lunch on the rooftop, where I offer a daily prayer. Usually, my favorite spot is empty, but today, I found it already occupied by a new employee, Sally. Known for her quick learning among the new hires, she was sitting alone, crying with a trembling voice. I considered leaving her to her privacy, but decided against it. I approached her gently to avoid startling her. She looked up in surprise, then, upon seeing me, seemed to lose her composure and sat back down. Is everything all right? Did something happen? I asked, taking a seat beside her. Tears continued to spill from her large eyes. I searched in vain for a handkerchief, then handed her a packet of tissues I had picked up from the subway station on my way to work. I may not be able to do much, but if you want to talk about it, I'm here, I offered. She sniffled and began to explain. Apparently, she had made a mistake at work and couldn't fix a bug she was responsible for. The security system, which was crucial for a major client's project, was in her hands. I checked the date on my watch. At this rate, she wouldn't meet the deadline. Have you talked to any senior staff? The project is managed by a team, not just one person, I suggested, hoping to offer some practical advice. I suspected that Sally, a new hire, was being overwhelmed with work. She nodded, explaining that she had asked for help, but everyone else was too busy with their own tasks. With the deadline looming, it seemed they were either too envious of her skills or unwilling to assist, leaving her with a crucial responsibility. After some thought, I decided to help her on one condition. She had to keep it a secret that I had assisted her. She was surprised but agreed with a simple, please. That afternoon, I worked on the program between my other tasks. To my relief, I found and fixed the bug fairly quickly. I also made a few additional improvements. By the end of the day, the system program was corrected. I quietly returned it to Sally, who was astonished. What? Already? Keep it a secret, I whispered, placing a finger over my lips. She nodded in understanding. As the deadline approached, everyone was scrambling, and I thought my help would go unnoticed. However, Jennifer, who had been closely monitoring everything, noticed something. The next morning, right after the meeting, she called me over. I was caught off guard. I had underestimated Jennifer's ability to scrutinize and oversee the department. It was a mistake to think I could deceive her. Well, I struggled to find the right words. Jennifer stood up, clearly frustrated. You fixed this program, didn't you, Eugene? She asked, her tongue sharp. It's impossible to find and correct a bug and rebuild it in such a short time. What's going on? I looked into your background because I was curious, even the erased parts. Why are you just a general affairs officer when you're clearly more capable than anyone else in this department? Are you trying to make a fool of me? Jennifer couldn't conceal her anger and raised her voice at me. I was puzzled by her reaction. Whether I chose to work or not, and how I use my skills should be my prerogative. To be honest, it seemed an overreaction on Jennifer's part. I was torn between revealing the truth or resigning from my job. Jennifer's irrational anger irked me. Just as I was about to respond, the department door was flung open with a bang. Heavy footsteps approached us. Who made this security program? Demanded a voice. It was Kate. Sally, still trembling, mumbled, "It was me." Kate stormed towards Sally. Seeing Kate's approach, Sally recoiled, her eyes brimming with tears, fearing a reprimand for her mistake. Panicked, I stepped forward. I thought it was me. I did it, I said, raising my hand to take responsibility. Kate halted and turned to face me, a grin spreading across her face. I thought, why, Kate? I asked, confused. Jennifer explained, Kate is a white hat hacker hired by this company. Her role is to find vulnerabilities by breaking the security systems we built. It turned out Kate had reviewed my program last night and was evidently displeased. Kate, standing before me, studied me intently. It's been a while, Eugene. Don't you remember me? As she gathered her long hair into a ponytail, I recognized her. My memories flashed back to high school during a summer coding program in the UK, designed to teach system programming to select students. I recall that she was one of the few younger participants. Although we didn't interact much due to the age gap, she had frequently approached me with questions. That was Kate. Her hacking skills had far exceeded those of the college and high school students I was with, and I had been in awe of her natural talent. It was clear she had a gift that couldn't be matched by mere hard work alone. I decided to stay and study in the UK for the exchange program, and I hadn't seen her since. Do you work as a handyman here? Kate asked, her tone dismissive. Don't be ridiculous, I replied. I know you have more talent than anyone else here. Why are you holding back? Kate's frustration was evident. The program was too well done for her liking. How I use my talent is my business, she retorted. Her irritation was palpable, and I could no longer hide my own frustration. As we glared at each other, Jennifer stepped between us. Without warning, she slapped me across the face with a sharp, resounding smack. For a moment, I was stunned, unable to process what had just happened. When I realized it was Jennifer who had slapped me, I was truly shocked. Why don't you utilize your talents? Jennifer demanded, her voice filled with a mix of anger and desperation. Why? I yearn for that talent so much. I feel like I'm choking, receiving the same gift as Kate. Jennifer's anger seemed to dissipate in an instant, replaced by tears that welled up in her eyes. Despite the conflict, her vulnerability was palpable. Jennifer's words struck a deep chord. I was struggling to understand the connection between her emotions and Kate's talent. It wasn't Kate's fault, and it wasn't Jennifer's either. It felt like a cruel joke from fate that I was caught in the middle. Jennifer dashed out into the hallway. Kate, still looking down, said, "Go after her. Take responsibility. Twins are strange. They always want the same things. I have the best gift, so Eugene, you can give yours to Jennifer." I couldn't see Kate's face, but her words triggered a memory from that summer vacation. I recalled how, on the last day, Kate had wrapped a small piece of wire around my finger and said, "Please remember to find me when we grow up." I'll become your wife. At the time, I thought it was a childish joke and had forgotten about it. I'm sorry, I have to go, I said, and with those words I hurried after Jennifer. I saw her turning the corner of the hallway and heading up the stairs to the rooftop. Wait, Jennifer, I called out, but she didn't stop. I heard the loud bang of the rooftop door opening. When I reached the rooftop, I found Jennifer hunched over, hugging her knees beside the small chapel. Her face was buried in her arms. I quietly sat down next to her, giving her the space she needed while offering my silent support. I'm sorry, I said softly. I said some horrible things earlier. I wanted to apologize for my previous arrogance, even though I knew my apology might come across as another form of arrogance. Jennifer shook her head slightly, signaling that my words weren't necessary. It's not something you should apologize for, Eugene. I'm sorry for speaking without knowing the full story, she replied, her voice trembling. She raised her head, revealing her red eyes. Just want you to listen to my story for a little while. As she spoke, I began sharing my own story. I told her about my time working as a systems engineer after returning from the UK. Everything seemed to be going well until a friend, who had started a successful company, began spreading rumors that I had stolen someone else's work. This friend tarnished my reputation and claimed my accomplishments as his own at industry events. It felt like everything I had worked for was slipping away. I became disillusioned and unwilling to trust anyone or use my talents for work. It was the CEO of this company who reached out to me during that low period. We had previously worked together, and he hired me with the understanding that it was okay to take things slowly. This was a story I had never shared with anyone before. Jennifer listened intently, her expression serious as I shared my story. After my confession, I felt an unexpected lightness, as if a burden had been lifted. I told her that despite my hard work, I felt I wasn't good enough compared to someone like Kate. Jennifer explained that she had worked hard to develop her own skills, but it hurt her to see someone like Kate, who seemed to excel effortlessly. Her frustration had been misdirected toward me, and she admitted to taking it out on me. Jennifer's sideways glance, filled with a childlike vulnerability, contrasted sharply with her usual professional demeanor. It was endearing and reminded me of her multifaceted personality. Her confession, "I want to use my talent for you from now on," felt like a lifetime declaration. Jennifer's surprised reaction, her wide eyes and flushed cheeks, was incredibly cute and charming. "Are there any lies in what you just said?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. "Of course not. In sickness and in health," I began, but Jennifer's hands stopped me, her face bright red as she looked away. "Isn't that a bit too soon?" she said curtly. "That's how serious I am," I replied. Standing up, I extended my hand to her. Without hesitation, she took it, and the woman who stood before me was now poised and professional once more. "Then start working hard from today. Don't hold back your skills," she said firmly, and I couldn't help but feel that this was the beginning of a new chapter for both of us. As I looked at Jennifer in her wedding dress, radiant and happy, I reflected on how our journey had brought us here. Despite the initial challenges and misunderstandings, we had grown together, supporting each other through our respective struggles. The bond we formed went beyond just professional respect. It turned into something deeply personal and meaningful. "I promise to make you happy. I want you to smile and be in a good mood every day," I said with sincerity. Jennifer's response was a quiet nod, her eyes filled with warmth and assurance. "I'm ready to walk through life together with you from now on," she replied, her voice steady and filled with conviction. Looking back, I realized that working alongside Jennifer had transformed from a challenging experience into a journey of mutual growth and support. As we stood there, ready to embark on our new life together, I felt a profound sense of contentment. The future was bright, and I was grateful for the chance to be by Jennifer's side, sharing in the joys and